Hello Mom, and whoever else watches these. I'm Joanna Wheel, and today I'll be showing you 2 simple ways to create very artsy-fartsy paintings out of coffee. What happens next will shock you. During quarantine, I found myself really wanting to do some arts and crafts, but not always did I have the supplies at home, and I figured maybe I'm not the only one with this issue. Most of us probably do have coffee at home in one form or another, but if we don't, at least it's considered an essential, so we are allowed to buy it. I use watercolor paper myself, but if you don't have any, you can experiment with the different types of paper that you have laying around in your home. I do find thinner paper warps a lot more, but that's okay, because you can flatten it right out with your clothes iron. Just put some parchment paper or a kitchen towel over it so you don't burn the paper, and it should be fine. This is also an inexpensive project, which may be an important criteria, since many of us, myself included, are not really allowed to work right now, so spending money on arts and crafts and DIY is not really a priority. And now, onto the video. For this project I used instant coffee. You can use brewed coffee too, just play around with how concentrated you can make it. Tap water, small, medium and large brushes, a metal straw, you can use any straw but please reuse your plastic ones if you can, a tube of golden gouache, which is optional, and some watercolor paper. I start by putting water in a little container and adding about the same amount of coffee to it to make it a concentrated mix. I wanted it to be fairly dark so I could water it down for the lighter tones later. It is quite lumpy initially, so stir it well. I used to do this kind of project as a kid with China ink, and I figured coffee would be cool to do this with. You want to use your large brush to pick up some of your coffee and lay it on the bottom of the paper, and then, by softly blowing through the straw, you can start creating these branch-like patterns. If you want, you can use the end of the straw to redirect where the coffee goes on the paper, and with a smaller brush you can add more coffee where you want to create more branches and even more saturation. Pretty simple, huh? Now let it dry before the next step. Get yourself some kitchen towel or a cloth to dab your brush in. It comes in handy later. While I waited, I decided to start project number 2, where we are going to use the coffee just like we would use watercolors and layer it down to create different tones and shading. First, we must lightly sketch what we want to paint with a pencil. I like using references, especially when drawing the human body. Then I mix 3 different concentrations of coffee by adding water to make each one lighter than the last one. Starting with the lightest tone, I lay down where the skin will be. Regardless of what your painting subject is, you want to go light to dark so you can layer the coffee to create shape and dimension. If you wish to create highlights, you can dip your brush in clean water, run it where you want to create your lighter tone, and then dab your brush on your cloth and pick up the coffee that's in the area. You will see coffee is very easy to pick back up. I do it quite often in this video. It is important to let each layer dry at least a few minutes before you continue adding layers of coffee to make it darker. If you found that you made a line very dark or the edge is too sharp, you can always dip your brush, slightly wipe some of the water against the edge of your water container, but not all of it, and then run it along the edge that you want to fade into the rest of the painting. Harsh edges do work well too. It just depends on what kind of shading you are trying to create. Because I was using instant coffee, I noticed that once the coffee dried, some bits were kind of shiny, and if you don't want that, you can just use normal brewed coffee, but I think this is pretty cool. Now that the branches are dry, I mix some water with my golden gouache. If you are using coffee, it is still important to dry it before adding the leaves so they don't bleed into the branches. With a small brush, I started to create this little acer-like leaves. You can create any shape of leaves you want, there are no rules. Maybe even add some flowers. And if you have some gouache or watercolor in the house, you can even experiment with adding a pop of color. When I used to do this with China ink, I really enjoyed adding light pink cherry blossoms to the branches and it looked adorable. If you are messy like me and rub the coffee with the side of your hand, it's okay. You can cover it up with an extra branch and leaf. Nobody will know. Well, you know because I just told you, but yeah, please keep my secret. When you are done, sign your piece and add the year so you can look back into this later on, if you keep it or if you gift it to someone. Now back to the painted piece. Adding the more concentrated mix, we are going to create the darker tones. Now that the skin is dry, I also added small details to the face with a small brush like the eyes, nose and mouth. Then I watered down my lightest tone even further to paint her legs and I created the highlights on them. And that's it, a super simple, kid-friendly project that you can do at home to kill your boredom and quench your creativity thirst. You can use these techniques for many different things, so if you do, please send them to me on my social media linked below. I would love to see them. Thank you for watching, and if you want to support my channel, don't forget to leave a like and a comment down below, and subscribe if you want to see more of my content. Stay safe, and see you next time. Bye!